What's up, everyone? It's Bones here. In today's video, we'll be featuring a blind second Ishizu Runick Infernoid deck. But before I begin, if you could happen to click on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons, it would be greatly appreciated as it goes a long way in supporting the channel and shows me that you like content like this. Clicking on those notification bells would also mean a lot as they notify you when I upload on the channel. So for these replays, I'll be doing them all blind second as I will have combos for what you do going first. And the final replay will also be the craziest one and probably the craziest thing that this deck has accomplished, but we'll see that our opponent is going to start with Dinosaurs, summoning the OV, getting the token off the Lost World. They'll add the Misk, and then from there they can activate the Misk from hand. They'll banish it in order to get an Arco from their deck. The Arco can then pop the baby in hand, getting them a pill, and from here they'll get themselves access into a Tyranno, but before that, use the baby's effect as they'll get themselves another copy of baby, go into a Linkuriboh as they'll activate the OV in order to pop our token. They'll protect it with Lost World, send the baby as they'll trigger the baby, bringing out the Scrap Raptor, and then from there they can use the Scrap Raptor and the Linkuriboh in order to go into Scrap Wyvern as they'll revive the Raptor, popping itself, and then they can go into their Savage, giving them a negation, as then from there they can get back the Wyvern, equip it to the Savage for the counters. They'll use the pill in order to get into their Tyranno, and then from here they can set the Imperm end their turn, and that gives us 3 interruptions that we'll have to play through, which is really nothing for 2 decks that are meant to board break, but we're going to start with the Freezing Curse here, and it's funny because our opponent thought that we misplayed, or thought that we may have misplayed when we did this, because you don't really expect the second Freezing Curse, but it's because of Lost World being on field that we can't target his monsters, but all we really wanted to do was bring out the Hugin in order to make it look like we didn't have Fountain, and because our opponent negated the Freezing Curse so that we wouldn't have access to the Fountain, this is where things are able to go off for us as we activate the Fountain, then use the tip in order to get a search as we'll add ourselves the Destruction. From here we can use the Destruction's effect and we'll get rid of the Lost World so that their monsters can't be protected from targeting anymore. We'll end up banishing a few cards, including their driver, as we'll then return 3 from our Runick Fountain in order to draw 3 more as we get 2 names along with the Brilliant Flames. The Brilliant Flames will take care of Tyranno, as from here we can then summon the Patrulia by banishing the Antra, and our opponent will imperm the Patrulia as it would have popped it anyways, as then from here we're going to be able to normal summon the Decatron, use its effect in order to send the Harmonic, and then we're going to use its effect in order to pop the Savage, as we'll then be able to go into a Bagu Pass, and I did this because we didn't have much follow-up. If we used the Vanishment outside of the Void Feast, with us skipping our battle phase next turn, it just felt like this was something that could wait. So as soon as our opponent sees the number 41, they're going to scoop. Now the second replay here is versus Earth Machine, and you'll see that they have Droplet, what would be combo, but we do have the Ash, and they're going to search out the Unclasp Bear off of the gear frame, as they'll then be able to special summon it, use its effect in order to send off the Citadel, and then from there they're going to go into a Merrymaker in order to go into Sargus, and we're going to Ash the Sargus because otherwise they'd be able to get a Regulus, so instead of just giving them the free negation, we're going to make sure that they would have to work for something instead, and they're going to activate the Clockwork Knight, set the Droplet, and then pass to us, as we'll get a draw for turn, and it'll be the Runick Tip, which is just a great top deck. And then from here we'll normal summon the Decatron. We're doing this first in order to play around something like Imperm or Forbidden Droplet, but we'll then be able to go off as we do have the Void Imagination in hand, and we'll then be able to send our Infernoids to the graveyard in order to bring out the Tierra. Tierra can then use its effect, which will send multiple Entis along with an Omega to the graveyard. Mill some cards from deck, as we also milled a Keldo, which is kind of nice, but we're going to pop our own Tierra so that we don't have to restrict ourselves from special summoning out Infernoids. Also getting an extra Infernoid in the name. Important to note that we did return the Citadel with the Omega from their graveyard into the deck, and then we're going to go into an Omega in order to banish their final card in hand, and then from here we're going to bring out the Onu, which will pop Sargus, and then from here we'll be able to use the Keldo's effect in order to return the 2 Clockwork Knights and our Fountain into the deck, and then from here we'll be able to go into the battle phase, attack for 3000, as we'll activate the Destruction, go into our Huggin. The Huggin will be able to get ourselves the Fountain. We didn't use the Void Vanishment this turn because we got everything we needed from the Feast. Our opponent was low on cards and we had a negation plus the Omega coming back with access to our Runick engine, so I felt that was just more important as we'd be able to get draws anyway, so we're going to activate the Fountain, use the tip. The tip will be able to net us a search for the Freezing Curse. We'll banish a Gear Frame from the top of their deck. We'll then use the Fountain in order to return Runick spells into our deck, as we'll be able to draw 3 here, as we do get an Ash and a Slumber, so that's kind of nice as we already have a Curse. And then from here, we'll see that our opponent is going to top deck a level 5, and they're just going to scoop, as on our turn, we'll be able to get Omega and just continue a slow but surely painful death. Now, this is definitely the craziest match, and our opponent opened pretty nuts with Called by, the Foolish, and the Aluber. They also have the Cartesia, which is kind of nice because they can extend. Our opponent will activate the Branded Fusion here, as they'll have full combo, and they're going to bring out the Albion, use the Albion's effect in order to go into a Lubellion. Then the Lubellion can use its effect, giving them access into a Mirror Jade, and then from here they're going to bring out the Lubellion by tributing off the Albion, getting them the Branded Lost, and then they're going to set a card as they special summon out the Cartesia, and then from here they'll use the Cartesia's effect, which will bring them out the Google, and I call this Google because I'm not pronouncing that, but they'll then use the Lost as Chainlink 2 in order to grab themselves the Mercarier for an extra layer of negation, as they'll send the Ad Libitum. They already do have the Branded in red. They'll keep the Foolish as they set the Branded in red off the Albion, and then they'll get back the Cartesia to hand, giving them the follow-up. So from here, we'll go on to my turn where I top deck the Fountain, and that's kind of nice, and we'll start by activating the Destruction, going for the Huggin, and we're doing this to get rid of the Keldo, as they're going to use the Mercarier on that, and that's kind of nice because we happen to top deck the Fountain, and I'll admit there was a ton of sackiness from both sides in this match, but I think that's what just made it crazier. As you see, they do have the Called by the Grave, they still have the Foolish, and it was just a lot of craziness this match, but our opponent is going to negate the Huggin. We'll activate the Fountain, as they're going to use the Mirror Jade in order to banish the Huggin, and then from here we'll activate the Freezing Curse in order to bring out a Gary this time, and I summoned it in attack, but no, we're not going to try to attack when we use Runick spells. We do have a Decatron in our hand. Our opponent is going to use the Branded in red now, as we're going to chain the Keldo in order to return their Albion that they sent this turn off the Mirror Jade, the Ad Libitum, and the Lubellion, so that they don't have anything that they can do in their graveyard, as we'll then get our draws, as we're going to normal summon the Decatron here. We do get into the Kelbeck, which is kind of nice. We'll send the Harmadic, as we'll then use the Harmadic's effect to pop the Google, and then from here we'll banish the Harmadic for the Antra. The Antra can then return the Mirror Jade to the extra deck so that we can avoid its ability to pop our board. And then from here, we'll go into a Baron, as we'll use the Baron's effect in order to pop the Branded Lost. And then we can go into the battle phase. We have to skip it because of the Runick quick plays, as our opponent top decks the Ad Libitum. And then from here, they're going to special summon out the Cartesia. I decided to let the Cartesia go, I believe, as I didn't expect the top deck Ad Libitum. They bring out the Masquerade, and then they're going to bring back the Aluber with the Ad Libitum, as we're going to negate the Ad Libitum with the Baron, and then they're going to activate the Foolish. So from here, they're going to activate the Tragedy sent off of Foolish, get themselves the Aluber, normal summon the Aluber. This will give them access into Branded Fusion. And now from here, I would like you to tell me down in the comments section, before I continue, who you think won this game, as our opponent is going to go and send the Albaz and the Lubellion for the Albion. They'll then be able to go into the Mirror Jade off of the Albion, and then they'll use the Mirror Jade, sending the Lindworm in order to banish our Baron. Now from here, they're going to go into the battle phase. We're going to pay 600 in order to activate the Destruction, get ourselves the Gary, as we want to be able to pop a card on our opponent's board. But we're actually going to get something better than that, as we're going to activate the Fountain here, and we're going to get into a Slumber. So the Slumber will be able to protect our Gary here, as we do have to be able to pay 600 more. And then from here, we're going to banish more cards, as you saw in Albaz along with the Counter Trap. They're going to attack twice now, as this will end up saving us. We'll use the Gary in order to pop the Masquerade so that we don't have to pay, as we will be low on life points after the Mirror Jade. They'll bring back the Lubellion, and then they'll use the Cartesia in order to get get back itself in the end phase, use the Albion, which will set the branded banishment, as we're then going to go onto our turn, and we get a Runick tip top deck. So from here we'll be able to get ourselves an addition of Brilliant Flames. We get more banishes, as we're going to use the fountain to return our Runick quick plays to the graveyard. And keep in mind, I'm only doing 2 because I want to be able to get off another fountain, because I just didn't feel like having 2 cards in hand would be enough, especially if they could stop our Kelbeck. I also knew that if I drew a Runick quick play, there was potential that I could end up drawing 4 instead of just 3, so that's kind of why I also took this route. We're going to end up drawing into Void Feast and a Runick Destruction, and that's perfectly fine with us, as we did get the extra Runick quick play, and now we can go into our Hugin, which will be able to pitch the Kelbeck, and they will end up negating the Kelbeck with the called by. So I am happy that I did that, as we're going to be able to get the second copy of Runick Fountain, and now our opponent is going to use the branded banishment in order to go into a copy of Skinian, as they'll banish the Mirror Jade and the Ad Libitum. They'll get back the Mirror Jade with the Ad Libitum, and then from there we'll go into main phase 1, where I'm going to activate the fountain. We can then use the Brilliant Flames, as we'll be able to pop the Mirror Jade. I was trying to slowly grind this game out and use the Runick quick plays on my opponent's turn, but from here they're going to banish the Gary in our graveyard. Off the fountain, we'll then get more draws, as we do get into the Void Banishment, which was a huge top deck. And then from here, I ended up making a mistake. I sent the Ash from my hand to the graveyard, or discarded it. It was meant to be the Void Feast, but it really doesn't matter, as I knew that once I activated Imagination, it was game over, as I was going to get all my Infernoid names. We'll get the Tiara. The Tiara can then be able to send the 3 copies of Entis. We'll pop their Priskinian along with their Lubellion. We're also going to get sends from the deck to the graveyard, as we'll then be able to pop our Tiara as well. Our opponent does send the Garura from their extra deck, which does give them a draw. But from here, we're going to go into our Sightsemus. We're going to keep the Aluber on board, because we don't want to play into something like a top deck evenly or imperm. We are kind of deep in their deck, as they only have 17 cards left. And as we summon the Onu, our opponent will end up scooping, as they knew that they couldn't do anything else. They did have the 3 Albaz gone from their decks, 1 in the graveyard and 2 banished, so they couldn't even resolve a copy of Branded Fusion if they got it, and managed to somehow bait the Onu. But another cool thing here is that we did have the Feast, and because of the way that I built this deck, we actually would have been able to get a Harmadic, a Patrulia, and a Decatron off of the Void Feast, though I don't think that the Decatron would have actually been able to send anything. Now, as promised, I want to go over the going first that this deck has, and this is just a put-together hand that I put in order to kind of show that this is the strongest turn 1 you can get, and how you play this depends on what you want to do. You can activate the Runick tip, get yourself that fountain if you want to play around Ash a little bit better. But just in order to kind of go all out for the replay, we're going to use the Hugin, get ourselves the fountain, activate the tip. From here, we'll get the 3 draws, which will be any random draw, as we're going to add ourselves the Freezing Curse. And then from here, we have the discard with the Sightsemus for the Void Banishment, which will get us into the Void Feast. And we'll do just that, as we're going to add ourselves the Feast onto our opponent's turn. And then finally, we can activate the Feast whenever you want to, and then you'll get yourself Patrulia, Harmadic, and the Decatron, and this will give you a negation or a DD Crow. It depends on what you want to send, along with 2 other DD Crows on your opponent's turn, that if they survive, they can also become forms of removal. Also have the 3 cards in hand that you draw off the fountain if you do this way, instead of just activating the Runick tip. Now, this second way, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. You saw that we played the Patrulia, the level 4. If you have a name that you can banish for the Patrulia, you can banish the name, special summon out the Patrulia, use a Runick quick play in order to get into the Gary, and then sort of like Crystal Beast, your turn 1 will be Baguska Pass. Now, this is the second version of this 2-carder that you have, and it really just takes Decatron plus any Runick quick play. So from here, we'll be able to summon the Decatron. We'll then use its effect in order to send the Saitsumas. Here we'll activate the Runick Curse, as we'll then be able to get the Hugin, and then we'll just go into Baron, giving us an Omni Negation. This is more so depending on the hand. Number 41 is a more likely scenario. You do happen to go first. The Baron is usually good if you have more Runick stuff paired with it. So finally, with all the replays and combos out of the way, we can get onto the deck profile. And you'll see that I'm not on the standard Infernoid count of 2 Deviati, 2 Onu, with the 3 Imaginations, the 1 Petrulio, the 1 Harmodic, maybe no Antra. And it's because as the game has changed, I feel we need more card economical ways in order to make our stuff go. And because the Ishizu, the Runick stuff can kind of get your deck going, even though you are kind of only playing a Kelbeck when I say the Ishizu stuff, able to get into your Decatron or your Void Vanishment more consistently, which is really all this deck needs when paired with the Runick cards, as you'll get into the rest of your engine eventually. Also the only going second card that we play, and it's obviously because of base, but because we also have 2 different engines that are good at going second. Other noticeable cuts that you may see is that we don't play the Sajet, and I don't play this because it means committing more into playing more of the bricks. It is a brick, so for consistency reasons we just cut that. Then the Attendel we don't play because of the Runick quick plays. We're skipping our battle phase, so while it's nice that it's also a DD Crow without restriction to which turn you use it on, like the smaller Infernoids, whose Saitsumas just does the same job, and it's also an extra form of removal with its banish effect. And then sort of like the same reasoning with the Attendel, we don't play the Equimax because no battle phase, so I felt like BLS was just an overall better Link 3 to go into, because it protects us from targeting and lets us play in grind-like states. Outside of that, I'd like to think everything else is pretty self-explanatory, as you were able to see what the deck does through the replays, along with the combos that show what the deck does going first. So I'll get onto the card by card, as we have the 2 Saitsumas, the 2 Petrulia, the 2 Harmodic, the 1 Antra, the 3 Decatron, the 3 Vanishment, the 3 Ash, the 1 Kelbeck, the 1 Keldo, the 1 Onu, the 1 Deviati, the 1 Imagination, the 3 Runick Tip, the 3 Curse, the 3 Brilliant Flames, the 3 Slumber, the 3 Destruction, the 2 Runick Fountains, the 1 Storm, and the 1 Feast to round out the main deck. To the extra deck, we have the Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, number 41, number 60, which is just another rank 4 that you can go into, get yourself more draws along with whatever you get off of Fountain. And we have the Baron, the Omega, the Scarlight is another level 8 that you can make, which also happens to be removal. It's not like you're spamming the board with this deck, so the pop is pretty free and it's usually only affecting your opponent. We have the 2 Hugin and the 2 Gary, the 3 Entis, and the 2 Tierra to round out the extra deck. Anyways, that's all I have for today's video, and if you made it this far, I thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. It's Bones, signing out. And I'd also like to say that you can go into the final Sigma to give yourself a Towers-like monster via the Decatron sending the Yachty and then bringing out a Hugin.